including Hall of Famer Chauncey Billups among those charged. The feds say the operation stretched across 11 states.
Federal agents stormed a warehouse, seizing evidence and triggering a sweep of more than 100 arrests linked to an illegal NBA gambling network. Behind closed doors, the game's wild ride of betting just hit its most dangerous turn. In this video, we will break down how the raid became the tipping point, who it reached, and why the league could never be the same. Warehouse raid. The turning point. The early morning raid changed everything. In a nondescript industrial facility, federal agents uncovered stacks of cash, betting slips, and encrypted devices used to coordinate illegal wagers. The operation led to coordinated arrests across multiple states, targeting players, coaches, associates, and crime-linked bookmakers. Sources indicate the seizure included luxury cars, device hubs, and millions of dollars laundered through underground gambling networks.
Yeah, it certainly is rocking the sports world today, John. As you mentioned, court appearances are underway right now, including with members of the mafia and other New York-based defendants just across the street from where we are.
Investigators say the warehouse was more than a staging ground. It was the nerve center of a sprawling network that funneled money, data, and manipulation into professional basketball. The volume and scope stunned even veteran agents. What once appeared as isolated misconduct suddenly looked like a corporate-style operation, blending insider access, performance data, and organized crime. For the NBA, the raid was the line of demarcation. Past mistakes were now irrelevant. From that moment, the league was no longer fighting rumors. It was facing federal evidence. The ripple effects were immediate. Teams scrambled to freeze communication logs. Legal teams began panic audits. The public horde of fans saw the game in a new light. Inside locker rooms, conversations turned to strategy of a different kind. Which phones to wipe, which lawyers to call. Some players who waved off warnings before now eyed the operations with fear. The numbers were staggering. Over 100 arrests and counting. What the warehouse revealed wasn't just illegal betting. It was a structural crisis. Inside that facility sat the map of influence, money, and data that exploited the sport from within. And the brutality of the discovery sent a message. The game is exposed, and the league will be dragged into the open if it doesn't act. 100+ arrests. A network exposed. The sweep by the federal authorities changed the game overnight. Over 100 arrests were executed in a coordinated takedown that spanned multiple states, uncovering a vast network built around illegal NBA-related betting and underground poker operations. What began as whispers turned into indictments, and the breadth of the arrests exposed something far more systemic than isolated misconduct.
His team played the Magic last night. He did not play in the game. He's scheduled to appear in federal court in about 20 minutes. Rozier's accused of purposely leaving a game with a phantom injury so that he and his co-conspirators, including his childhood friend, could make tens of thousands of dollars.
According to law enforcement filings, current and former players, coaches, and their associates were swept in two interlocking conspiracies. One focused on insider information, non-public injury updates, minute reductions, and lineup changes fed into large-scale betting. The other centered on rigged underground poker games backed by organized crime families, where high-tech cheating devices were used to defraud wealthy participants. Among those arrested, the head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers and a star guard from the Miami Heat. Alongside them, dozens of lesser-known figures were knocked in. Bookmakers, intermediaries, technology facilitators, all part of the operation. But the real shock was the size of the network. Investigators noted that the files reference hundreds of players, some charged, others still under scrutiny. For the NBA, this mass arrest event signaled a crisis on two fronts. First, the league's public image as a clean and competitive entity took a severe hit. Second, the internal vulnerabilities, player access, data flows, sportsbook partnerships, were thrust into the spotlight. Teams, sponsors, and executives entered damage control mode, trying to assess the exposure and understand who among their rosters may be implicated. The arrests also carry massive legal weight. Defendants face charges of wire fraud, conspiracy, money laundering, and corruption of sports wagering systems. With sentences potentially reaching decades, the landscape of risk in professional basketball has changed forever. As the investigation widens, the question now isn't just who was arrested, it's how deep the network goes, and whether the league's most trusted players and coaches were merely the front line of a far larger criminal ecosystem. The secret files unsealed. The facade of professional basketball cracked when federal investigators revealed the existence of more than 150 sealed documents tied to an expansive gambling probe. While the filings lumped together dozens of players, coaches, and associates, the core allegation is unmistakable. Private information about injuries, minutes, and game strategy was being traded and wagered on by shadow networks.
Other court appearances set to happen soon across the country. There are two indictments at play here. One is about an illegal rigged poker scheme that involves two former NBA coaches and players. The other involves a current active NBA player accused of altering his performance during a game as part of a sports gambling scheme. That player is Miami Heat guard.
Inside the indictment from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, authorities outline a scheme in which insiders, some of them NBA participants, provided non-public data ahead of games. In one cited example, lineup changes and player minutes were leaked hours ahead of tip-off, enabling bettors to place wagers with a near certainty of outcome. As the sealed records were referenced in court, team rosters across the league shifted from roster lists to suspect lists. The documents name more than 200 players and staff as connected, directly or indirectly, to the betting network. Many of these individuals now face uncertainty over whether they'll be formally indicted or simply publicly tainted by the association. For NBA front offices, the implications were raw and existential. Every strategy meeting, every medical update, every substitution could be re-examined under criminal scrutiny. Players who once casually viewed rest days or benching as tactical now find those entries in logs carrying a different weight, one that could be used as evidence in wire fraud and money laundering proceedings. The sealed files didn't just expose illicit gambling, they exposed the vulnerability of the league's structure. What had been private game planning, internal analytics, and medical tracking became the currency of corruption. And when those documents begin to leak into the public domain, reputational damage spreads faster than any suspension ever could. In the next chapter, we'll turn the lens on the games themselves, how investigators tied bets to specific matchups, and how seemingly innocent rest days or undisclosed injuries became red flags in a catastrophic investigation. Games that triggered the probe. When federal agents peeled back the layers of the investigation, they didn't discover one or two questionable matchups. They uncovered 7 NBA games between late 2022 and early 2024 that shared a troubling pattern. Betting lines shifted. Player rest days and injury entries didn't align with public reporting. Wagers poured in on unders or starters sitting out, sometimes before team announcements were made.
Now, the allegations involve several NBA teams, and not every single person is named in the indictment, but one game that is in question was a 2023 Portland Trailblazers game where there were a lot of bets placed on it, and the Trailblazers sat 4 of their starters in that game.
In one glaring example, guard Terry Rozier, then with the Charlotte Hornets, exited a game after only 9 minutes of play, following tips allegedly sent to bettors ahead of the matchup. The prop bets placed on his performance matched the timing and magnitude of the insider leak, according to court filings. Behind the scenes, investigators linked similar activity to Damon Jones. During a February 9, 2023 contest involving the Los Angeles Lakers, he is alleged to have tipped a co-conspirator that a star player would be unavailable before the injury status was made public. Wagers followed, then results. Less overt, but perhaps just as telling, were the games flagged for tank messaging. Around a March 2023 contest involving the Portland Trail Blazers, betting patterns suggested beach bettors had insider knowledge of strategy shifts and starter omissions. The filings identify a coach-style figure whose descriptions match those of Chauncey Billups. These games weren't anomalies, they formed a blueprint. The combination of insider tips, sudden game day changes, and large prop bets triggered alarm bells at sportsbooks and integrity monitoring firms. Once the FBI connected the dots to players and coaches, the scope of the probe broadened rapidly. For the league, the message was devastating. What fans saw as normal rotation or rest decisions may have been part of a larger scheme. As these games became evidence, the idea of just another night at the office vanished. The game is under investigation, and for the NBA, every play now carries suspicion. The industry reacts, shockwaves beyond the court. When the federal sweep of the NBA gambling scandal became public, the immediate victims weren't just players or coaches. The damage rippled outward through the entire business of basketball. Broadcast networks, apparel sponsors, and betting partners found themselves caught off guard, scrambling to mitigate exposure as fan trust wavered and media scrutiny intensified.
Victims were attracted to play alongside well-known professional athletes and coaches like Chauncey Billups, only to be unknowingly deceived through rigged shuffling machines, fixing the odds in their favor.
Networks that once elevated the NBA's nightly drama now found the biggest story of the moment was legal and reputational. One major broadcaster aired commentary on the scandal while simultaneously advertising its own betting app, a juxtaposition that lit up social feeds and underscored a growing conflict of interest. For sponsors, the stakes were immediate and visible. Brands that tied themselves to the NBA for its glamour, global reach, and integrity faced a harsh reckoning. Which image will consumers believe? The superstar athlete or the indicted insider? As reports emerged of multiple games flagged for manipulated outcomes, sponsors began reviewing contract terms, pulling back marketing placements, and demanding clarity around player exposure. Meanwhile, the betting industry, once a celebrated partner of professional sports growth, entered a defensive mode. Regulators, lawmakers, and even league officials began questioning whether the integration of real-time analytics, micro-bets, and branded sportsbooks had opened a door the NBA wasn't prepared to close. The narrative shifted. No longer was legal betting simply part of fan engagement. It was now part of an integrity crisis. Within NBA front offices, conversations changed tone overnight. Compliance officers met with legal teams. Owners asked whether every angle had been insured. Risk assessments, once routine, carried a new urgency. The league's business model, once predicated on growth through higher stakes, bigger sponsorships, and global expansion, now faced a reckoning of its own. How to restore credibility when the product itself might be compromised. As the domain of sports business stood in reflection, one truth became clear. The scandal wasn't just about players, it exposed a systemic vulnerability. And the question echoed across boardrooms and broadcast suites alike. How do you reclaim trust when every commercial partner is watching the scoreboard and the sub-page investigations? Locker room fallout and analyst outrage. Inside the locker rooms of the NBA, the mood has shifted from bewilderment to alarm. Coaches and players alike are grappling with the fallout from the arrests of high-profile figures like Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier. Suddenly, every substitution, every rest decision, every stat line is being re-examined for potential wrongdoing. According to recent reporting, many players say they feel they're walking on eggshells, uncertain whether a casual comment or a minor change in rotation might draw federal interest.
The NBA put out a statement that reads in part, quote, Terry Rozier and Chauncey Billups are being placed on immediate leave from their teams, and we will continue to cooperate with the relevant authorities.
Veteran figures inside the sport have launched scathing reactions. A former league legend expressed deep embarrassment, noting that the scandal not only damages specific individuals, but tarnishes the careers of teammates, coaches, and staff who were built on trust and hard work. Analysts have also raised blistering critiques, not just about the action itself, but about the culture that allowed it. One commentator called it reckless, arguing that the convergence of high-stakes gambling and star athletes created a perfect storm of temptation and vulnerability. Within teams, internal memos and meetings have become routine. Head coaches are briefing players on the heightened risk of outside influence, reminding them that betting lines and player props no longer exist in isolation. Some players are reportedly working with agents and lawyers simply to ensure they are clear of any appearance of misconduct. The scrutiny is unrelenting. What once was a brotherhood built on shared goals now feels like a surveillance environment. Even for players who are unconnected to the indicted individuals, the damage is real. Social media scrutiny has intensified, endorsement deals are being reevaluated, and the simple act of stepping on court is now weighed against whether it undermines public trust. For many, the glory of the game has been replaced by a fear of association. As the scandal spreads through the NBA fabric, the locker room floor is no longer just a court, it's a crucible. And for everyone involved, the inevitable question looms. If the foundation of trust cracks, what supports the rest of the league? Media blitz and sponsorship breakdowns. Once the arrests and indictments took the spotlight, the arena of professional basketball shifted from fast breaks to firestorms. Major media outlets sounded the alarm, breaking away from routine game coverage and diving headfirst into the scandal's implications for the NBA brand. Social media feeds flooded with outrage and disbelief, amplifying one clear message. When players are indicted and crime rings exposed, it's no longer just a sports story, it's a reputational crisis.
Meanwhile, NBA Hall of Famer and current Portland Trail Blazers head coach Chauncey Billups was also arrested in Portland this morning for the rigged poker scheme.
Brands, which once paraded sponsorships around star athletes, paused campaigns overnight. The league's prominent partnerships with major betting companies, once celebrated, now looked like risk zones rather than revenue zones. Analyses pointed out that the NBA's deep ties to sports betting apps and real-time wagering had amplified its vulnerability. Broadcast networks found themselves caught in a paradox. On one hand, betting partnerships had become integral to marketing growth. On the other, the integrity crisis now threatened the core product. Internal memos reportedly circulated, debating whether to continue promoting in-game odds overlays and betting app commercials while players and coaches faced federal scrutiny. The result? Sponsors demanded clarity, advertisers threatened pullouts, and the league's commercial engine stalled. Inside boardrooms, executives conducted damage assessments faster than play-by-play. Sponsors asked pointed questions. Was their dollar still selling purity or just prop bets? Was their image aligned with competition or collusion? Betting platforms weighed their exposure, operating in a league where insiders apparently tied to player performance were part of the action. The irony was sharp. The same data feeds and partnerships fueling growth were now feeding suspicion. For fans and the public, the message felt stark. If the league's product might be compromised, so might the entertainment they bought. Trust had never been more fragile, and in a landscape built on hype and heroism, the collapse was quiet but irreversible. The players' union pushes for answers. As the scandal engulfing the NBA widened, the spotlight shifted from players on the court to the voices representing them off it. The National Basketball Players Association, NBPA, stepped into the fray, challenging decisions made by the league and demanding clarity, fairness, and transparency. What began as concern over a few implicated athletes evolved into a full-blown negotiation over rights, process, and remuneration.
Related to that game. This is an ongoing investigation, and it's part of the same investigation that resulted in a lifetime ban for former Toronto Raptors player Jontay Porter, who admitted to altering his performances during games so that people, including himself, could profit off of these prop bets.
When the league placed key players on administrative leave without pay while investigations continued, the union objected. It cited the presumption of innocence and the need to adhere to the collective bargaining agreement. For players across the board, the message was clear. You may be suspected, but your career still deserves protection. The tension between discipline and due process became a defining feature of the crisis. Beyond paychecks, the union pressed the league on gambling policy and education. Long before arrests, warnings had circulated about prop bets, insider topping, and the rise of micro wagers tied to player stats. But according to union sources, enforcement was inconsistent and education insufficient. The NBPA now insists that risk mitigation, clearer restrictions, and protective measures be built into the system before further damage is done. The reaction from players ranged from defiance to fear. Some veterans publicly supported strong punishments for those found guilty, while younger players voiced anxiety about what being under investigation could mean for rookie contracts, endorsements, and future earning potential. In locker rooms across the league, the question was no longer, who's next, but what happens when the suspicion is just enough to harm me, even if I'm innocent? For the league's management, the NBPA's involvement added a new dimension to the crisis. It was no longer solely about arrests. It was about labor relations, collective rights, and the future landscape of basketball employment. The players' union is making unmistakable demands. Reform must go beyond headlines, and enforcement must include the protections that secure careers, not just reputations. The next chapter promises to expose how the league's global footprint now enters the fray, a global reputation at risk. The scandal enveloping the NBA has not remained confined to U.S. borders. Its impact is being felt across continents and markets. The league's global expansion, once celebrated for uniting fans from Manila to Madrid, is now under severe scrutiny. Overseas broadcasters, merchandising partners, and international sponsors are reassessing deals as the core product, the competition itself, comes into question. In Europe and Asia, game broadcasts featuring implicated players face delays, contract renegotiations, and cautious messaging. Licensing agreements tied to NBA franchises in Africa and the Middle East are being reviewed. Retailers that rely on NBA-branded apparel and events are asking whether the brand still carries the promise of integrity and fairness. The question is no longer only about stars, but whether what happens on the court is still genuine. The broader perception shift is stark. Sports fans in international markets have grown accustomed to seeing the NBA as a transparent and trusted global sporting institution. Now, when major crimes, mafia ties, and mass investigations dominate the headlines, that credibility erodes quickly. A marketing professor noted that brand disengagement becomes much more likely when fans perceive the scandal as structural rather than isolated. For the NBA's global partners, the stakes are high. Washed-out trust means fewer broadcast dollars, weaker merchandise ties, and diminished appeal in emerging markets where the league invested heavily. The financial ripple effect threatens not just individual franchises, but the league's strategic international growth model. Even domestic policy decisions overseas are affected. Countries considering sports betting legislation point to this scandal as a warning signal. In markets where the NBA sought to sell its influence, the league must now defend its oversight credibility. The message is clear. A scandal of this magnitude doesn't just rock a league, it shakes a global institution. The NBA's worldwide footprint, once its greatest strength, now demands proof that the sport remains legitimate everywhere it plays. The next chapter will ask if the league can rebuild, or if the fallout will define the future. The final warning: integrity's crossroads. As the tidal wave of indictments, sealed files, and high-profile arrests surges through the NBA, the league stands at a critical juncture. The involvement of elite figures, the exposure of insider data, and the links to organized crime leave little room for safe assumptions. Lifetime bans, criminal charges, and ruined careers are now part of the visible risk table. The question is not just what happens to individuals, but whether the league survives the credibility crisis it now faces. Internal documents reveal that the league issued a league-wide memo to all 30 teams, signaling a new era of oversight, reassessed injury disclosures, education efforts on gambling risks, and upgraded monitoring systems using AI and data from betting operators. But policy shifts alone cannot restore what was lost. For fans, each play may now carry the perception of manipulation. For sponsors and partners, the product may no longer feel trustworthy. As one analysis in The Guardian put it, the league jumped into bed with gambling. Now it is getting its due. The commercial stakes are monumental. Revenue streams once thought secure now face threats from global partners worried about brand contamination, from state regulators where legalized betting is still evolving, and from fans who feel betrayed by the assumption of fair competition. Canceled endorsements, paused sponsorships, and renegotiated media agreements now form part of the fallout. For the league's leadership, the directive is unmistakable: restructure standards, restore trust, and ensure the game remains something worth believing in. The upcoming seasons will carry a new weight. Every injury report, substitution, or statistical anomaly could become evidence. This isn't a moment of rebuild, it's a moment of reckoning. If the NBA fails to show measurable progress, this scandal may define its legacy rather than being a footnote. On the other hand, if the league can demonstrate real change, transparent enforcement, consistent discipline, visible cultural evolution, the scandal may become the pivot point for a stronger era. But make no mistake, this is the final warning. Integrity is no longer optional. The NBA's gambling scandal has exposed a web of deceit, insider tips, and organized crime ties reaching the highest levels of the league. Careers are on the line, sponsors are rethinking partnerships, and fan trust hangs by a thread. The next chapters for the NBA will be written not on the court, but in courtrooms, boardrooms, and policy meetings. Will the league restore its integrity, or will this crisis define a generation of basketball? The answers are still unfolding, and the world is watching.